All right, here we are in Making Connections, our weekly interview corner where we meet people right here in our community who make up the fabric of Korean society and hear their stories. So last week, we sat down with Master Sommelier Kim Kyung-moon, whose newfound passion is introducing Korean sul, or liquor, to an American audience. Now this week, our guest is Bryan Do. He's the CEO and founder of Three Societies Distillery that recently launched Korea's first single malt whiskey, a liquor born in Ireland and Scotland. He joins us to share about his vision to export the Korean expression of the liquor back to its birthplace and other countries in Europe. Good morning, Bryan, and welcome to the show.
Good morning, and thank you for having me on.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure. I mean, I'm pitch hosting. What's the word? Pitch hosting? I'm guest hosting.
Yeah.
So for me, it's also the first time. But welcome to the show. And why don't you tell our audience a little bit about you so they can kind of see where you're coming from with this?
Right. I'm an old Korea hand. I've been in Korea for way over 20 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I actually, my career has been really eclectic, but it actually first started when I got the baton from the original host, Na Seung-yeon.
Oh, yeah.
Because she was a show host for a children's quiz show.
Oh, so you were on radio before or TV?
No, I was on TV before.
Okay.
On the other, on the state-run English
I see.
channel. So I started with that. Then I went and did some internet startup work, and then I ended up going back as to do news. So I was a journalist for a while, then a producer, an anchor, and then I went on to do PR for a while, and then I got hired by the client, and I worked at the M Company, the world's biggest software company, for almost a decade.
Oh, man. This is a wild and tangled path to whiskey.
It is. But before whiskey, there was beer.
Uh-huh.
So while I lived in Singapore also, working for that company in the Asia headquarters, and then I moved back to Korea to run some of the consumer business for the company. And when I came back, I met a new batch of friends that were making beer at home. So they were home brewing. And this was a lot before the craft beer scene caught on in Korea. And I fell in love with making beer. I made beer a long, long time ago when the ingredients were really scarce in Korea, so it was hard to keep it going. But after starting it again, I fell in love with it. And during that time, I was also moonlighting as a bartender at a bar I had opened with a friend.
Oh, wow. Okay.
While I was working. And then I started seeing people's faces kind of light up at the bar when they first tried craft beer. This was 2013, 2012, 2013. And I was saying, hey, what if this beer was mine? Wouldn't that be even better? So I kind of took that and ran with it. And built one of the first generation craft beer companies. And with that company, it did really, really well. And at the end of the day, Anheuser-Busch, which is the largest beer company in the world, ended up buying my company. And during that time, I also had an affinity for whiskey. My restaurant, our bar was called Hopscotch back in the days. It's no longer around. But hops for hops and scotch for scotch whiskey. And
that's interesting because, what is the connection then between beer and whiskey? Because, beer you brew, but whiskey you have to distill. So what do you distill whiskey from?
Beer. You basically make beer and you distill beer.
Oh, so it's like one step into the other. This is probably the most direct connection that there is in your whole career path.
I think that is. I think when you graduate from beer, a lot of people go into distilling.
Okay.
So there's a lot of, I'd say there's a lot of similarities in there. But from when I had sold the company, I had said, I'm going to start a whiskey company also, a spirits company. So, and they had agreed and said, okay, that's fine. As long as you don't make any more beer, that's fine. So I started with that and now have started Korea's first single malt whiskey distillery.
That's a pretty big achievement. I'm looking forward to trying it out at some point.
Yeah.
But so when you were making beer and you decided to start going into Scotch, was there some kind of an exemplar in your mind? Like, I want to go for this kind of flavor, this kind of effect, this kind of style?
Yeah, well, I've always had a kind of a trailblazing mindset, even during beer. We were the first to barrel age beer. We were the first to grow our own hops and use it. We were the first to make different types of beers, like a kimchi sour beer. So with the whiskey, I have a little bit, there was a little bit more burden because we are the first in Korea.
Right.
So we wanted to make sure that it first tasted good, but also that it represented Korea well. And to represent Korea, what would represent Korea? And we thought long and hard about this and came up with spice. Because a lot of Korean food is spicy, from kimchi to gochujang to different things. We thought spice is a very good representation of Korean food.
So how does that kind of come out in the whiskey that you're making?
The way that we ferment the wash, which is pretty much beer, kind of brings out a different character in the whiskey itself. So we make a fairly spicy spirit, and then we, of course, we let that mature in the oak barrels. So it's still a very floral and good tasting and easy to drink whiskey, but it also has a hint of spice at the end to remind you it is from Korea.
Oh, it's interesting. Yeah, because a lot of the whiskey I've drunk over the years, I mean, there's some that kind of hit you in the nose. There's some that kind of mellowly burn down your insides as you go in, kind of warming as they go. So this then, it gives you a little bit of kick after the drink then, huh?
I think the spice doesn't kick you as much. It just lingers in your palate a little longer, and it reminds you of what you're drinking, pretty much. We have only been distilling now we've only been open for about a year and 6 months almost, and we are really, really happy with the outcome of the product. It's still not final yet because it's still maturing, but we're happy in the process that it's at right now. It's maturing much faster than we had actually envisioned.
Okay, so what were you expecting? How long were you expecting to keep this maturing in a barrel?
We were thinking 3 years right now, but I think there's a very high possibility that we'll release it before 3 years. The maturation process in Korea is much, much faster than anywhere else in Scotland, for example, just because of the extremes of the temperature. That is one of the reasons why we chose the location, is because the oak that it matures in, the wood is similar to our skin. So during the winter time, it's going to kind of condense and collapse because it wants to keep heat inside and keep warm. And that's what the wood's going to do. And then in the summertime, just like our pores open up, it's going to open up and pour. So it's going to suck in a lot of the spirits. And then in the wintertime, it'll push it back out, kind of like an accordion. But it does that in such extreme ways that, for example, in Scotland, in where we're maturing it right now, where our distillery is.
Oh, where is that, by the way?
It's in Namyangju. It's about 30 minutes away from Seoul. It's very close to Seoul.
Oh, that's convenient.
It is. Where we have it, it's on average -20 during the winter, and in the summertime it goes up to 36. So the extreme weather changes helps it mature much faster than, whereas in Scotland it's always cold.
Yeah, always cold, always rainy,
Always
from what
raining,
I hear.
yes.
Yeah. So, today is the International Day of Failure, and so we're trying to highlight this in kind of the different things we talk about. And there is no success without failure. So, in your initial attempts at making this whiskey, what would you say was your biggest learning experience through failure?
I would have to say the biggest failure actually came not because of our fault, but because of the coronavirus. We weren't, luckily, it's maturing during the time of coronavirus where we can't sell it. However, there are other spirits that we had made to keep the company cash flow going. But because the bars are not open, nor are the duty-free shops open, that we weren't able to control in that sense. So the failure in that sense is we weren't able to control our external environment. Hence, the cash flow wasn't there. And it's, there are some difficulties, but nothing that we can't get over right now, and that we have already tried to cross that hurdle.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, there's no accounting for an international pandemic, so
No.
yeah, you can't really plan for that in the business, huh? But but yeah, it sounds like otherwise the production of it is going according to plan, and it sounds like you're hitting the marks you want to hit. So when do you expect that this will start coming out for the public consumption?
Well, we just released our first impression last month, and a lot of people were really shocked at the taste of it because, like I said, it's matured much quicker than anywhere else that they've probably tasted. Some people kind of doubted us, saying, "Oh, you guys must have put in some additives," or things, but it's just the luck of the environment that we've got. And most likely the general release will probably be in 2023.
Okay.
Hopefully early 2023. So that's when we'll be releasing the whiskey in earnest for the general public, not just for Korea, but all around the world.
All right. And so your initial production, you're planning for a 3-year maturation. Are there any plans for like a 12-year or an 18-year?
Oh, of course. The ones that we have already started in 2020, we'll be setting those aside for 8, 12, 18, 30 different years.
What blows my mind is that my kids will be in college by the time the 12-year comes out. Do you have any kids? Like, are you?
I do. There is a barrel with a name on it that says Emma's College Fund. So that comes out in 15 years. No, in 13 years' time now.
Oh my gosh.
It was 15 years back then. So it will be a 15-year-old whiskey.
Talk
That
about
will be
family
special.
heritage.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. So in terms of like the long-term plans, I think that's pretty interesting. But when you started down this path, and like you were saying, you were a TV personality, you were in computers and like all these different paths. When you began, did you have any idea that 20 years from then you would be making whiskey and planning for like 30-year decades into the future with these barrels?
No, not at all. Not one bit. I was actually not very entrepreneurial, to be honest with you. I was more of a salaryman. And I enjoyed working at a company also. I still do. I think later on down the life, I may come back and work in a company. But for right now, I enjoy this entrepreneurial spirit. I enjoy bringing new things to Korea for Koreans to be proud of. I think the fact that Korea has not had a single malt whiskey come out was kind of, to me, a little shocking, and shocking to other people around the world too, because there's tons of quality things that come out of Korea.
Yeah.
And although this is an alcohol or liquor, I think it could also be a great product to show to the world that Koreans can also do whiskey very well.
All right. And one last question. Okay, whiskey, bourbon, scotch, these all have legal definitions and like specific terms, right? Like you can't say that a whiskey made in Ireland is scotch because there are very specific aspects that have to go into the creation of scotch in Scotland to make it legally as something you can call scotch. So what do you hope that this endeavor you're on, if it does come to the point where there is a legal definition for the spirit made in Korea, what do you hope it will be called?
Well, there is a legal definition in Korea. If it's matured, if it's spirits made in Korea and it's matured in oak barrels for 1 year, you can call it whiskey, whether you spell it with a EY or just with a Y.
Yeah, right.
We're trying to start a new trend where we spell it whiskey with a capital K at the end to show that's from Korea.
All right.
But we want to show that this type of spirit can be made very well. And it could be a world-class spirit. And we hope that when Koreans go abroad or people from abroad come to Korea, they'll be able to grab a bottle of ours and share it with their friends abroad. And one of the reasons I made this company was to change the drinking culture in Korea little by little, whereas you're not drinking to get drunk, or you're not drinking for speed, but you're drinking to enjoy company that you're with, enjoy the conversations you have during that time. So hopefully it becomes something where a lot more people drink more responsible, and with more health conscious in their mind.
All right. And, with this spirit of joint ventures, we do have to get into the answer for our second quiz. And I was hoping I could ask you to help me read it out for everybody. And maybe you even know the answer. So let me read the question one more time in English. This dish is considered the national dish of Scotland. It's made of the liver, heart, and lungs of a sheep, minced and mixed with beef or mutton fat and oatmeal, and seasoned with onions, salt, and other spices, which are then packed into a sheep's stomach and boiled, similar to a Korean sundae or blood sausage. Do you know the answer to this question?
I actually do, because I've tried it several times.
All right. Well, here we go. Drum roll, please, Brian.
답변은 haggis입니다.
That is right.
It's haggis.
Have you ever had it?
I have several times. Actually, when I was in Scotland, we had that every morning.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I've only seen one place in Korea that ever made it, which shut down like years ago. But that was definitely an interesting thing I wish I had tried. Now, real quick, I just want to say...